Intertalk Radio, you're in to all things music.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, happy Friday, everybody. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I am Scott, your host, and a man who has been described as a better driver than most self-driving cars. I'm going to just put that on my driver's license. Better than most self-driving automobiles. With me in the booth is Paul B. Paul, how's it going?
Pretty good. Not a bad driver myself. I haven't slaughtered anyone on the roads yet.
That's right. So that means you're better than most self-driving cars as well.
Mm-hmm.
But will either of us be better than Uber's new line of self-driving flying taxis that are going to debut in Los Angeles? I think in about 6 months. They said they're going to start.
This is a real thing?
Oh yeah,
flying taxis?
Yes, it's just like, imagine. I mean, flying taxis doesn't really do it justice. I've seen the photos of it. It's a big drone.
Yeah,
with like
that's what I figured.
Giant propellers.
Uh-huh.
Giant propellers, right? And then it can lift enough. It can lift a person's weight,
mm-hmm.
And it's like you get into this little cockpit, and it's like flying in a really large drone.
I'm mixed emotionally between like freaking finally we've been promised this stuff since the Jetsons and oh God no, please no, not this. I'm kind of feeling both emotions at once.
Well, like we said with the self-driving cars, we said the first media coverage of the first crash is going to be spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And you just wonder, is it going to be a week? Is it going to be a month? Is it going to be but as soon as the self-driving, self-flying taxi runs into a billboard, runs into a building, runs into something and kills whoever's in it, it's going to be a really different conversation at that point.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be government regulations. And then there's going to be investigations. There's going to be regulations. There's going to be.
I would argue maybe they want to put in like a few government regulations ahead of time before these things start flying into buildings with people.
You'd think, but you never know.
It's the wild, wild west out here.
Well, it's going to be a fun story. I can't wait. Hey, kids, you are tuned in to episode 84 of The Big Show here, and I'm Scott Robertson. I run a company called Robertson Communications. It's a public relations marketing agency in Orange County, California. Lovely and scenic Orange County, California. If you want to reach me, here's how. My email is scott@robertson.com, 2 M's like communications.com, or at www.robertsoncom.com. That's where my blog is, and episodes of this show and that kind of fun stuff too. And also almost any of my social feeds, including Twitter and Facebook, which is at robertsoncom or facebook.com/robertsoncom. You can figure it out from here, I'm sure. And of course, we're streaming live on Periscope. Hey, Periscope, what's up? We are streaming live at robertsoncom as well. Always a lot of fun. So you can see what's going on in my little home office on Friday afternoons. Very exciting. So I decided to do a show. I had another topic this week, but there were just so many companies just kind of stepping in it this week that I felt like we just need to do a show to address it, honestly. And there was just so much of it that it was almost impossible to ignore. And so we should probably do a show about it and talk about the marketing communications implications of all this fun stuff that's going on with a few of these contenders for crisis communication. The Alka-Seltzer Crisis Communication Award of the Week goes to, that sort of thing. And so we're going to talk about a couple of companies. And, of course, we're going to come back in segment 2. We're going to talk about everybody who's winning and losing this week. It's going to be heartwarming. It's going to be exciting. Everybody's going to learn a little bit. Everybody's going to be entertained. So you picked a good show to tune in. I wanted to spend some time talking about Allegiant Airlines, and I want to spend some time talking about Starbucks. And if we have time in the first segment here, I want to talk about Facebook too, because we've talked about it a little bit, but just in terms of addressing their crisis. And believe me, when I tell you there's enough companies stepping in it that I had to pick those. There's at least 4 or 5 other ones who could have made the list this week, but we just don't have that kind of time. As I say a lot in my practice, there's just too much stupid in the world for me to go around and talk about everybody. So, we're going to have to just delve it out, a little bit at a time. But let's talk about Allegiant Airlines. So in case you are unfamiliar with Allegiant Airlines, it's a budget airline that runs older aircraft. It's really, very inexpensive flights, out of various airports in the Midwest, including Indianapolis and the Indiana area, that kind of thing. And this past Sunday, unfortunately for them, 60 Minutes paid them a visit and put a whole, program together around Allegiant Airlines and how bad they are. And of course, obviously one of the worst things that can ever happen to you in public relations is the sentence 60 Minutes is coming. Because odds are that's gonna end poorly for you. Just gonna say. But Allegiant Airlines story, if you didn't get a chance to see it, you can probably see it on YouTube or see it. You can probably stream it on, CBS.com or something like that. But the segment really raised serious concerns about the company's track record. It reported a lot of things about this airline, that it suffered a very high number of mid-flight breakdowns and unscheduled landings. 100 serious incidents reported to the FAA in the 2-year period between January 6th of 2016 and the end of October of this past year. So that's 100 incidents, for this very small airline. And then they talked about things like, engines catching on fire and, the plane or fluids leaking into the cabin with the passengers, hazardous chemicals and those kind of things. Really, really bad stuff. Really, really bad stuff. So as is no surprise, the stock price of the small budget airline fell quite a bit on Monday. And the CEO, this story I read just today said that Allegiant Air CEO's net worth is now $52 million lower after the 60 Minutes segment questions safety. So the CEO of the airline lost about $52 million, and the CEO also resigned. I just read recently as well. So CEO lost $52 million and lost his job, after the 60 Minutes segment aired. So there's a lot of media coverage of it. Of course, Allegiant Airlines came back and they fired back after a CBS after the 60 Minutes report, and they basically said the story was outdated and said it bears no resemblance to Allegiant's operations today. That's a quote from them. One pilot at the airline called the report slanderous and irresponsible to both our passengers and our employees. Okay, so CBS then doubled down and said, okay, well, we did an analysis of the FAA data that was provided to us and they concluded that Allegiant aircraft have been 3.5 times more likely to have serious in-flight mechanical failures than other U.S. airlines. And they just said that yesterday, by the way. So basically, one side, obviously 60 Minutes makes a living on, investigative journalism, exposing the truth, exposing their version of the truth. Then the company fires back and basically says that these reports are, exaggerated or they're outdated or there are a lot of things. So let's just talk about it from a marketing communications standpoint, right? Obviously, here's the first thing I'll say about it. This crisis started a long time ago. This crisis culminated with the 60 Minutes report that hit, on Sunday. But let's be honest, if you have FAA reports showing, if you have 100 safety violations to the FAA in 1 year, and I'm working public relations for you, I want to know what's going on. I mean, somebody should have been asking a lot better questions a lot faster than this. And you don't wait for the crisis to refute to refute the report. So that's one thing that makes me kind of think, this isn't like a crisis that happened, just this year or just a month ago or those kind of things. It's like, 60 Minutes has been gathering data on this company for a long time. There is a long history and a long documented track record of stupid going on with this company. And it's like, there's only so many things that marketing and communications can do. By the way, if you're a marketing communications professional out there, sometimes you're asked to kind of do the world. They turn to a crisis communication person and says, we'll make this go away. We'll make this go away. It's like, sometimes there's just too much stupid in the bucket for you to be able to dump it out as a marketing communications person. And in this case, that is absolutely the case. You have a very messed up company, a very messed up culture, an unsafe airline running cheaper planes that break down more easily, making those kind of financial decisions to say, oh, well, that's how they decided to run a profitable airline by cutting a lot of corners. Unfortunately, the corners that they're cutting, are causing FAA violations and causing, mechanical failures, in flight. And, us as the passengers of the world, we're not into that. We're not into we're not going to take the risk, to save $50 on a Midwest flight. It's like, we're going to, trust plays a role into this. And I read another story that said that where there were tons of passengers trying to get out of their flights on Allegiant Airlines after the 60 Minutes report, aired, because it was just right in their face, and obviously the other news reports that kind of came from that. So I guess the last thing that I want to say about Allegiant Airlines is that they didn't just step in it this week, right? There's been a long history of doing that, and what you want to do. Obviously you want to run a company that is safe, if you're an airline, and you want to run a company that is taking care of customers, building long-term customer relationships, all those kind of things. If you can't do that within the system, I saw the CEO interviewed and said, well, we had to make some cost decisions and this kind of things. We can't really run it profitably because it's so hard to run an airline and blah, blah, blah. Boo-hoo, nobody cares. Go find something else to do with yourself. It's not okay to cut those kind of corners that could end up in loss of human life and could end up in, FAA, violations. So that's what I'll say about that. To me, it seems like a whole company full of scumbags who got away with this for a good long time, and then 60 Minutes blew the whistle on it. And now they are firing back saying, well, that was outdated. We are not nearly as unsafe as we used to be. It's like, I don't know. I just, if you have the misfortune of working for a company like this, maybe with the new CEO kind of coming in and seeing things differently, I find that companies kind of stink from the head up. If the CEO's an idiot, the whole company's full of idiots. So it's like, and believe me, we live in a world where there's a lot of idiots who are CEOs. Don't get like, don't be like stargazing into the 3-letter title and be like super excited. It's like there's a lot of morons that hold that title. And so, what I want, the final word on Allegiant Airlines is time will tell whether they're able to, recover from this kind of thing or not. But in my opinion, they really don't deserve to. They probably deserve to go out of business. And they definitely deserve to have another CEO in there with a different vision and maybe a different way to run the airline in a profitable fashion that is safe. So that's Allegiant. Another company that kind of stepped in it was Starbucks this week. You may be familiar with the story. 2 men in Philadelphia were basically arrested, for doing pretty much nothing, for just kind of loitering on the property. And the manager, at the time, who was Caucasian, called the police on these 2 African-American gentlemen. And then, of course, it became it kind of fed into our national narrative that, all white people distrust and hate all black people and sort of vice versa. And which isn't true. by the way, but it is a story that the media really love. If the media find, did you know there's people in the media who keyword those kind of those who look for those kind of keywords? They look for specific stories that involve African Americans and Caucasians in areas of conflict, and they basically have algorithms that run and check for those kind of stories, and then they report on those kind of stories, because what have we taught them as a culture? There's no story that we like better, right? There's no story that we're going to tune into more. There's no story we're going to enjoy more than a good old racism in America, story. We love that narrative. We love to get in there and talk about why that is. Starbucks actually handled it okay. One thing I will say is that the CEO, came out, and apologized to the men and basically said, "Look, the manager did it wrong. We did it wrong, and I think the CEO of Starbucks should be commended for that, for that step. I think that was the right response. I think, I think it's one thing that they did that was kind of weird is that on May 29th, they're shutting down all of their locations for this, unconscious racial bias training exercise. And to me, that's like, you ever work in a place like where one person refuses to do their dishes and leaves them in the work sink, and then you get memos from HR and says, everyone needs to wash their dishes and put them in the dishwasher when they're done. Everyone needs to do this. And you're like, it's the asshole that doesn't wash his dishes. And because he doesn't wash his dishes, I have to put up with a memo about washing dishes. This is kind of the same thing. You basically have one guy, who sort of had a problem. And then there was another one in Los Angeles that kind of popped that was lesser version of that. But then you've got hundreds, thousands of employees, of Starbucks. You're going to shut everything down, and you're going to teach everybody about racial bias because of something because one or two people didn't wash out their dishes in the sink. I personally don't like that. I personally don't think that that's right. And I think it also assumes you make the assumption as the company that everybody in your company may be racist. And maybe it's just one idiot who had one bad day, that had one, maybe he was scared that day, I mean, you don't know what's going on with people, and maybe he's not racist, but he was just concerned. I mean, you don't know. By the way, Starbucks did fire that guy. And you are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. Come on back. We're going to talk about more people winning and losing this week. See you in a few.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on InterTalkRadio.com.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, happy Friday, everybody. You are so smart because you are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Media. Today, we're talking about companies stepping all around it and in it and all that fun stuff. In the first segment, we got Paul with us. Paul, what do you think?
I'm sorry, sir. This radio network is for paying customers only. I'm going to have to ask you to get off my air.
I'm going to have to ask. You're loitering. You're loitering on the air.
Buy something or get out.
You know, actually loitering, you can throw people out of your store for loitering.
Right.
You just can't throw black people out if you're white, I guess. That's what I say.
Yeah, it's kind of a goofy story. I was kind of, seeing, I didn't dig into it that deeply, but I can kind of see it both ways. Definitely you don't want your store managers to be some racist
it's true.
Person tanking your brand, but on the other hand, you have a company and you have the right to refuse service to whoever you like.
It's true. It's true. Now, do you ever, in Intertalk Media, do you guys ever have the dirty dishes in the sink?
Yes.
The thing?
Yep.
There's always one dude who will not wash off this burrito plate or whatever. and then and somebody writes a letter to everybody because of one dude. It's like, talk to the dude.
Right, yeah.
Directly.
You know who's not washing the burrito off their dishes? It's
Cedric. We know.
The cheese is on their shirt. It's not that hard to track them down.
Oh, man. We could talk about that subject all day long, but let's move on to who's winning and losing in the world. First up, winning apps are winning, believe it or not. iPhone users in the U.S. spent 23% more in apps and on apps in 2017 than the year before. So games, dating apps, streaming services all contributed to a rise in consumer spending in iPhone apps last year, according to for our App Store intelligence firm Sensor Tower. The firm found that U.S. iPhone users spent 23% more on in-app purchases in 2017 than they did the year prior, or on average, $58 per active user was spent on in-app purchases, which is up from $47. So that's kind of interesting. Apps are doing well. Games certainly, hook you to buying different types of things, and you can kind of see that, happening. But apps are doing well. We're going to put them in winning this week. Also, one of my clients, BandLab, which is a mobile app for Android and iOS, of course, and also on the web. They hit a cool milestone this week that I should tell everybody about. We've been celebrating the fact that they're at 3 million users now. So you have 3 million users worldwide that are going on to BandLab and collaborating and creating music together. If you haven't done it yet, really cool app, great client and fantastic app. And it's www.bandlab.com. Check it out. It's free, which all musicians can appreciate. We love the free stuff, us musicians. We love it. Also, BandLab was named one of the 10 best musician apps for Android this week by AndroidAuthority.com. So you can check out that story and more. So anyway, it's a good week for apps, I would say. Good week for my clients on apps. Good week for apps in general. If you have an idea for an app, call Scott. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, let's move on. Amid the fake news and data leaks in our world, the advertising industry has now made this concept of brand safety a thing. So basically, here's what you say. Here's what I want to say about brand safety. It's basically, you've got a brand you're trying to manage, but you can't always control where that appears, especially if you're placing ads. You don't know what content it's going to be next to. And basically, what has happened now is that IPG Media Brands, media agency giant has appointed its first EVP, Chief Digital Officer, Joshua Locock, as its first Chief Brand Safety Officer. how'd you like to go meet a woman in a bar and she's like, what do you do for a living? And you're like, I'm the chief brand safety officer. I mean, I get an image of Dwight from The Office wearing like an orange vest and being like, you know, and like, remember the episode where people weren't taking the fire thing seriously. So he locked him in the office, and then he took a blowtorch and he heated up all the handles on the doors. Oh, Dwight. So anyway, see, Dwight was a chief brand safety officer too. No, but the idea of this is that they will. The thing is, this guy will basically look at clarity around what's going to keep the brand safe online. So there are brand safety challenges that are sort of unique in every market, and clients' definitions of brand safety vary. And really, it's about driving consistency in the approach and sort of holding the partners accountable and this kind of thing. You know, here's one thing I want to say about brand safety. I understand that you're an organization that wants to keep your brand safe and that sort of thing, but this falls firmly in the category of this is a bunch of crap you can't control. And if you try to go forward and control it, I don't see that happening. I don't see you being able to, you know, being able to exercise control about how. I mean, what's the next thing? We're basically like, well, we didn't like how some people interpreted this ad, and so we're going. You know, I mean, it's like, yeah. Once the brand's out of your hands, you kind of put it on the mighty river in the world and see where it goes, that kind of thing. I don't know if that's winning or losing. I think it's just weird. It's a bad title. I know that for sure. If somebody said, Scott, we're going to offer you a job, and well, first of all, I have a job, but let's say I didn't have a job, and they said, we're going to make you the chief brand safety officer. I think my first question would be, do I get to wear the fluorescent vest, and do I get to carry a firearm? And probably none of those things are true. So I'm going to say brand safety is probably a non-starter. So we're going to say losing on that. You know who's probably losing is Guitar Center. Lots of reports this week that things aren't really looking good for Guitar Center. 59 years old, and really has established itself as sort of the go-to place for all things music. But the company seems to really be in some pretty serious financial trouble. This week, the company was knocked down to a CCC rating by leading rating agency S&P. And it's really a sign that GC is at risk of bankruptcy. The classification was, quote unquote, narrowly averted through an emergency loan renegotiation, reportedly upward of $615 million. See, now you're feeling better about your credit card bill, right? You're like, well, it ain't $615 million. That's what I'm saying. Well, the storefront remains the largest instrument retail in the U.S. with 280 locations sprawled across the United States. They keep talking about a decline in sales, especially that of guitars. And basically, then the author of this particular story, which is Investors Business Daily, goes out on a limb. Investors don't know jack squat about the music products industry, by the way. I after decades of reviewing their stuff, I mean, they need to pick up some better research. So because they make statements like this. Even leading brand Gibson is struggling, so there must be a correlation here. No. The reason that Gibson is struggling is because it bought a whole bunch of companies that it probably had no business buying, doesn't have any idea how to run, and has a giant family of brands that don't really complement each other very well and tried to be this big life, be-all, end-all lifestyle brand, and sort of, overextended itself in buying companies and stuff, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? That's not why businesses must be profitable, right? You must look, a little business 101. You're going to look at the balance sheet. You're going to say, are we bringing in more money than we're putting out? And then when you have to do things like borrow a bunch of money, to keep the business solvent, the core problem that you have is that you aren't making enough freaking money, right? And there isn't any, there isn't any magic formula in the world that erases that. So you got to find a way to make money with what you got, And, I mean, Musician's Friend, like I said, is not going bankrupt because guitars aren't selling. That's not true. And certainly not, believing things like that just sort of, perpetuates the idea that stuff is true. And Gibson's not going out of business because of they're not selling guitars. Guitars are selling fine. What you have is some complicated organizations that have a lot of debt, that have taken on a lot of debt through the years, and then you have to pay debt back. That's how debt works, actually. And, they are doing a bad job sort of paying their debt back. And I even saw a thing that, Musician's Friend Guitar Center just opened up 2 brand new locations, So a lot of this is just kind of restructuring debt, and they're trying to look for, is it a decline in sales? And, retail is tough anyway. Retail's very, very tough today, competing with things like, Amazon.com and Sweetwater and, and all these, online retailers and things like that. It's got to be a trick, right? You got to look at your floor space and what's selling, what's moving, and you could do all that, retail magic to kind of keep the business alive. But right now, I think we can clearly see that Guitar Center is definitely in the losing category. Gibson is still in the losing category because it still hasn't figured out its, the way out of its financial stuff. But and we could definitely say that the business reporters of the world are definitely losing, because every time they try to write about a company in this industry, they're reaching for stuff that isn't true at all. And they need to look at the actual data for, before you say that the guitars aren't selling, you should probably look at the latest issue of the Music Trades, magazine, which has only tracked, by the way, it's only tracked guitar sales in the United States of America and retail for since like the late 1800s. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of data. There's quite a bit. It goes back quite a bit. They've only been looking at this industry for a short period of time, but that's who I would look to, by the way. So very, very important. All right, let's move on out of Guitar Center land, and let's move on to Heinz. Heinz, man. So Heinz launched I'll just read it to you. It's exciting news for condiment lovers who struggle to find that perfect ratio of ketchup to mayonnaise. They created their own pre-blended mayo chup. Mayo chup. Hard to say anyway. The mayo chup, also known as fry sauce, fancy sauce, or variations of sauce, is a signature blend of Heinz ketchup mixed with new Heinz real mayonnaise. The spread has been gaining a lot of traction online from people who are eager to try the combination, especially with summer grilling season around the corner. Okay. Losing for a lot of reasons. First of all, there are no condiment lovers who are struggling to find the perfect ratio of ketchup to mayonnaise. That's stupid. Okay? No one spends their valuable time on this earth thinking about things like that, right? They just mix together ketchup and mayonnaise. It's just I don't know what to do sometimes, I got to say. But I mean, are you out of other ideas? I guess so. If you're Heinz, you're sitting around the table and you're like, what else can we make? We make ketchup. We've been doing that for a good long time. What else can we do? I don't know. But mayo. So are you ready? The mayonnaise and ketchup purists. The mayo chup is only available in the Arab Gulf states for now. Nice. There are plans to roll the mix out in America, but only if the condiment drums up enough interest. So they're going to launch mayo chup in the Arab Gulf states. Do the Arab Gulf states eat a lot of ketchup and mayonnaise mixed together? Just one more reason to go to war. That's what I say. But anyway, mayo chup. Really? That's got to be losing. I mean, I'm not not a condiment expert, but I'm going to put that in losing anyway. You know, if you want to be winning with your stuff, there's a few emojis that can increase your click-through rates according to new data. Emojis can be powerful tools that help your messages stick with your audience. And a recent study found that participants who were sent messages with emojis scored higher on memory than those who were sent messages without emojis, indicating that emojis can make your message more memorable. Interesting. So, from a marketing standpoint, emojis in a tweet can increase engagement by 25.4%, and emojis in a Facebook post can increase the number of likes by 57%, the number of comments and shares by 33%. If emojis can so drastically increase the likelihood of engagement, there's no reason you shouldn't be using them. Other than, well, they're emojis. That's what I'd say. But with all that said, there are still... Did you know there are 2,666 emojis to choose from? So they asked the question in the story on TechCrunch, which ones will increase your engagement the most? Which ones will incentivize people to click your links? Which ones should you avoid? And of course, what they found, the top 10 most popular emojis. And I know you're excited, so I'm gonna go ahead and just skip through some of this stuff. But definitely check out the story, by the way. It's on TechCrunch about emojis increasing click-through rates. And you will enjoy that story, I'm sure. One sentence of the story here where it says, octopi and horses, especially octopi and horses, encourage interaction from your audience, higher click-through rates, and better messaging from your brand. I've never used the octopi emoji in anything that I was doing. Use the heart, use the smiley face, the winking face, the pointing finger is good. The thumbs up, always solid. Those kind of things. So, but check out the whole thing if you want to see the entire thing on emojis. You know, they made a movie about emojis and it failed. It failed, massively at the box office. Which would lead you to believe emojis really aren't that popular. But then, of course, this study comes along and says, hey, you're using emojis. They're working really well for your posts, and they increase your engagement. That's who's winning and losing this week, folks. And it was quite a parade. Come on back. I'm going to tell you how to step around it when your company's stepping in it. See you in a few.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on EnterTalkRadio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, happy Friday. You are so wicked smart because you are listening to May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I am still Scott, your host, and we are here in segment 3. We just did segment 2, talked about a whole bunch of people winning and losing, and Paul B's with us. Paul, what did you like this week?
Guitar is always being close to my heart. The whole Guitar Center thing is, I agree with you. And they're kind of, maybe reaping what they've sown a little bit when you approach a company that's supposed to deal with artists and and you come at it with this cold, calculated, Wall Street trader approach. Is it any surprise that this is where you end up? And like you said, there's a lot of companies that are doing great. There's a lot of our own sponsor, Pitbull Audio, being one of them.
Oh yeah, totally
up and coming guitar distributor, great place, knowledgeable staff, passionate people that work there. It's not this huge heartless conglomerate, and there's ways to do this right, and there's ways to just treat this as as a holding company or whatever, and that's what happens.
And they probably wouldn't borrow $610 million and then not have a way to pay it back over decades or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? It's like, you can't, we can all relate to this in our own personal credit cards, right? You put a bunch of money, on a credit card. It's like, eventually you got to pay it back. It's really not rocket science, and you can't just break even. You got to pay it back, usually with quite a bit of interest attached to it. So, I don't know. When I see stories like that, I want to say people, the world goes, oh, Guitar Center is having, financial problems again. It's like, I've been in this industry for, 15 or more years now. And it's like, they've always had financial problems. I can't remember a time when they didn't have some kind of financial problems. They're always moving the same debt around and shuffleboarding that stuff around somewhere else and that kind of thing. And that's what they do. So it's like, but it doesn't mean like, I have a problem with when reporters all of a sudden start to say, well, I guess nobody's playing music anymore, so just wrap it up. It's like, what? There's no correlation to that at all. That's what I say. And Paul agrees.
I agree.
Paul is here to agree.
I support this message.
He supports the message. And you're in episode 84 here, and we've been talking about companies like Allegiant Airlines and Starbucks who kind of been stepping around it this week. And I thought I would give you, especially, to the percentage of my audience that is, responsible for marketing communications, and I know a lot of you out there are, then you need to know how to deal with this stuff, And so I've got a few tips that can help you. So number 1 is plan for it. It's not if, but when something's going to happen with companies that you represent. If you're an agency, you need to have a plan for every single one of your clients in case something goes south. And the plan needs to include a couple of key things like, who's our spokesperson? Who's our spokesperson? Quickly. How can I quickly reach people on the website if we need to post something quickly? Same thing for the social feeds. If you're going to be in a, key communications role, then you need to know how, you need to know where how to reach everybody, in a moment's notice and be able to kind of execute a good crisis communications, strategy. But every good crisis plan, begins with just that, a plan. A plan of this is not necessarily that we have, thought through every single contingency or everything that might befall our brand out there. But we certainly know that if something happens and we find ourselves sort of in that kind of crisis mode, for example, we know 60 Minutes has been gathering information and they're getting ready to launch a damning report about an organization that we're working for. Then you need to be able to respond to that, and fairly quickly. And even a preemptive response would be advisable for something like that. Of course, like I said, there are some things that even the most gifted public relations communicators on the planet can't undo, and certainly 100 safety violations from an airline would fall in that bucket, definitely. It's like, I'm good, but why don't you stop treating the airline like it's a just run the airline better. It would be what I would say, and then make sure that we have a marketing plan that supports running the airline better and that kind of thing. But plan. It's really, really important to plan. It's important to have, if you take on a new client, one of the first things you need to be able to do as you're onboarding them is basically say, okay, so what is my responsibility with this client or this company in a crisis? If you come on in a senior communications role with a company, then you need to have a plan that you can, get to quickly and you can execute very, very quickly. Again, thinking through, putting yourself in that situation and what does all that kind of stuff look like? This is probably a good time to mention that one thing that we never do in any type of crisis communications is we never, we never delete things. We never delete accounts and posts and website pages and things like that. That's a recipe for disaster. Don't ever do that. I've heard some crisis communications people get up there and say, the first thing you want to do is you want to go up to your website and you want to delete all the pages that, that implicate you in the thing. It's like, I shake my head at things like that. If anybody ever tells you something like that, just, hit them with something, whatever's close, whatever's near you, just throw it at them, because that's dumb. That's going to cause a huge problem. Maybe they're just trying to create more work for themselves, I guess. But anyway, tip number 1, we're planning for it. We've got a plan. Number 2, and this is really important in crisis communication, investigate it. Don't speak before you know what the hell happened. Okay? You must have a decent investigation. And sometimes your statement might be, we're investigating. We don't know. We're not going to come out and say one way or another because we're still investigating, that kind of thing. One of the things that really lost a lot of credibility for President Obama with me was when the San Bernardino shooting happened here. He was on the air, like 30 minutes after it happened, basically blaming it on gun control, basically blaming it on guns, and saying, "Oh, well, there's too many assault weapons in this country and this kind of things." And I mean, this is the president of the United States basically coming out and saying, "Okay, this was the problem was too many guns out there, yada yada yada." And you're like, or, Mr. President, perhaps it was terrorists who wanted to kill us, and perhaps as they found out later that this was a plan with guns that were owned by criminals and could not have been, it's like, when you go out and you speak at any level before you know what's going on, you have the risk of looking really, really stupid if you haven't done a thorough investigation. And sometimes the press, you've got this pressure, right? The pressure is, we've got to respond quickly. We've got to respond fast. We've got to respond fast. And then but an investigation takes time. Fine. What is your statement? Have you ever seen them do this? They say, we're in the middle of investigating that. We don't know. Here's what we know. And that's what you say. You say, here's what we know. Boom, boom, boom. You recap the information that you know, and you don't say things that you don't know. You don't blame guns on it if it's terrorists, who probably brought their own guns. You know what I mean? It's like, just, a little bit of investigation is a very, very good thing. Always investigate, and have a placeholder message while you're investigating so that you can say something, because you certainly don't want to pull a Mark Zuckerberg. Cambridge Analytica happens, and it's like, he's gone, and the company doesn't say anything. No, we don't do that ever. If the media is talking about it, we want to be in there, helping as much as we can, and trying to kind of steer the story to what, at least what we think is the truth, and so make sure that you investigate. I see a lot of people that rush to action without doing a proper investigation, and that's really not a good idea. Number 3, if you did it, own it. All right? CEO of Allegiant Airlines comes out and says, oh, well, that report was really outdated and it was really bad or whatever else. It's like, yeah, but, you had 100 violations. The FAA concluded that your airline was 75% more likely to have an in-flight incident than any other airline on the planet. That's on you. There is no running from it at that point, and if you did it, own it. Just like, Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, he did own it. I mean, he did the dirty dishes in the sink thing where he's going to make all the employees go through racial sensitivity training or whatever. And it's probably just a handful of people that he, and actually the guy who called 911, I read another story today, and they have parted ways with that employee, which means, they paid him a big severance and said, disappear. You don't represent the brand, and here's a big severance. You can't ever talk about this. And I hear they're doing wonderful things in the Arab Gulf states right now. So hit the bricks. That's what we're doing. And you'll never hear from that guy again. That's what they do. So, and it's not a firing per se. It's a mutual parting of ways with a big check and a gag order never to talk about this situation. So anyway, but really, really important, the ownership. I think Starbucks did a good job of owning it. They basically said, yeah, this was a mistake. These guys didn't do anything. They didn't deserve to be arrested. We didn't, we had a manager that, got freaked out for one reason or another and called the cops and shouldn't have done that and then one of the things I really like what Starbucks did too is, they have a value statement. They understand, what their values are. And one of them is they want to be a welcoming, open place for everyone to come and drink really, really overpriced coffee. I'm talking coffee that costs you, 4 to 5 times what it would cost you pretty much anywhere else. I mean, remember when coffee wasn't that exciting a beverage and it used to be like 40 cents, for like a cup of coffee and it's like same coffee, same thing. But I mean, kudos to Starbucks, right? Creating the environment, creating the brand around it. People are like, yeah, I'll pay $5 for it. Why not? But they did it. They owned it. I think that's good. You look at Mark Zuckerberg, in the case of Starbucks and the Cambridge Analytica thing, they did it. They did not own it. They showed up, to a grilling, in Washington and sort of tiptoed around it. And then it came out that they never planned to tell any of us about any of it. So not only did they not tell us when it happened, they weren't planning on ever disclosing it and that kind of thing. And then cause people to, ban Facebook and leave Facebook and that kind of thing. Wells Fargo, just mistake after mistake after mistake, but, didn't really own it. They really just kind of fired the CEO. I guess they owned it by, hey, this guy did it. It was his fault. Let's, scapegoat him and then the company lives to fight another day. But really, really important. The rule that if you did it, make sure you own it. Number 4, follow it all the way through. And we can call this the Chipotle rule. Ask why it happened and fix it. And fix it. If you had food poisoning, if you have a culture that creates food poisoning because people aren't washing their hands, ew, gross. But let's say that's happening. God, and so then follow it through. Ask why it's happening. Ask why as many times as you have to, ask, and find out why it's happening and fix it. Fix it. Fix it. Make sure, follow it all the way through, all the way through. Don't just because, the media spotlight is off of you for a while, doesn't mean that the problem in the organization still doesn't exist. Ask a lot of questions and find out why. And people are like, well, I'm just in communications. Does that really fall to me to do it? I think so. I mean, I absolutely think so. If people call communications sometimes the conscience of the organization, and it can be uncomfortable to get in and have that conversation. You're in a room with a lot of the C-suite executives and a bunch of lawyers and stuff, and you're asking questions about why this stuff is happening. But I would just say it like this. I say, look, if this happens again, it destroys this company. And you point at the CEO and go, you're going to be fired. Everybody in this table gets fired. Everybody's going to have a bad Christmas. Just so you know, this happens again and this whole ship goes down. So let's make damn well sure that it doesn't happen again. And, hopefully everybody will be able to understand that that's the right approach. And that's exactly what we want to be doing. But you see that. Remember, when we, on this show, I've legendarily, I have covered Chipotle like crazy. But remarkably, they still keep poisoning people with their food. For years, they shut the whole company down. They did, hand washy training. They showed everybody how to wash hands. They showed everybody how to use hand sanitizer, everything else. Boom. Sure enough, food poisoning. Again, another food poisoning incident. Oh, there's another one, another food poisoning incident. They changed CEOs. Now, there have been no food poisoning incidents since this CEO took over. And man, you just got to make sure it doesn't happen again. Very important. And actually, that's tip number 5. Make sure it doesn't happen again. That's the tip. So tip 4 is follow through, ask why, and fix it. But tip 5 is make sure it doesn't happen again. Everything in your power to make sure it doesn't happen. Very, 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 very important because, we are talking about brand trust. We are talking about the big things of why a brand exists. A brand, can run out of its trust currency very easily. And in this day and age, it can happen really, really fast. And then you're just done. You're just done. You're just out of business forever. So don't let it happen. So what have we learned today? We learned the world is filled with companies making mistakes, screwing up royally, and some that are, making mistakes, but also taking care of it appropriately from a communications standpoint. And the difference, it really is about having the right plan and executing that plan correctly in the right moment. How are you going to know? It's easy. Your audience will tell you. So be sure you're listening. Sometimes the strongest marketing relationships can be forged when the brands are at their lowest points. Really, really important. That's it for me, marketing fans. Until next week, this has been Scott Robertson, host of May the Best Brand Win on Intertalk Media. Rock on. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be the music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?